Welcome, everyone. Today, we are going to peel back the layers of history to look at a version of Padre Pio that very few people truly know. When we think of this great saint, we almost immediately picture the older, bearded Capuchin friar, his hands covered in half-gloves, his face etched with the lines of a lifetime of suffering. We think of the visible stigmata, those famous wounds of Christ that drew millions to San Giovanni Rotondo. But there is a deeper mystery, a secret chapter that came before the crowds and the cameras. Have you ever wondered what happens when God touches a soul with fire, but asks them to carry that fire in total silence? Today, we are exploring the terrifying and beautiful period of the invisible stigmata, the 7 long years when Padre Pio bore the wounds of the Crucifixion, yet not a single soul could see them. Before we walk this sacred path together, let us take a moment to pause and open our hearts to one another. If you are carrying a burden today, a pain that perhaps, like Pio's, is invisible to the world, I invite you to leave it in the comments below, or simply write "Amen" to join your spirit with ours. And as you scroll, if you see the prayer of a brother or sister, please reply with a word of encouragement. Let us build a sanctuary of compassion right here, ensuring that no one among us has to walk through their valley alone. Now, let us journey back to the year 1911. We are not in the bustling monastery of San Giovanni Rotondo yet. We are in the quiet, rustic countryside of Pietrelcina. Padre Pio is young, barely in his mid-20s. He is known simply as Fra Pio. He is frail, often sick, and his health is a constant source of worry for his family and his superiors. He has been sent home to his family's farm because the monastery life is too physically demanding for his weak constitution. But while his body is weak, his spirit is becoming a battlefield for something extraordinary. It is here, in the silence of the Italian countryside, often under the shade of an elm tree where he loved to pray, that the supernatural began to break into the natural world. We often imagine the stigmata appearing in a single dramatic moment, a thunderclap of divine intervention that remained forever. But the truth, revealed in his private letters to his spiritual director, Father Benedetto, is far more complex and far more human. In a letter dated September 8, 1911, a young and trembling Padre Pio reveals a secret that he had been keeping to himself. He writes about something that happened the previous day. He describes a phenomenon that terrified him. He says that in the palms of his hands, little red spots appeared. He described them as being the size of a coin, specifically a centesimo, a small Italian penny of that time. Imagine the scene. A young friar, sitting in prayer, opens his eyes to see his flesh marked. These were not scratches. They were distinct, circular marks, and along with the visual sign came a sensation that defied medical explanation. He described a sharp, intense pain, a burning that seemed to bore through the center of his hands. And it wasn't just his hands. The pain echoed in his feet, a piercing agony that made walking a penance. But here is where we see the true heart of the saint. Most of us, if we were given a miraculous sign, might feel a surge of pride, or perhaps an urge to show others, to prove that God is with us. Padre Pio's reaction was the opposite. He was overcome with a profound sense of shame and fear. He was terrified of the publicity. He was terrified of being looked at, of being treated as a spectacle, or worse, of being revered when he felt himself to be a poor, unworthy sinner. He tells his spiritual director that the moment he saw these red marks, he begged the Lord to take them away. Listen to the nature of his prayer, for it contains a lesson for all of us. He did not pray for the pain to stop. He did not ask for the suffering to be lifted. He prayed, "Lord, remove the visible marks, but leave me the pain." He wrote, "I prayed that the Lord would withdraw the visible signs, which were for me a source of unspeakable confusion and humiliation." This is a courageous and terrifying prayer. He was essentially saying, "Lord, let me suffer with you. Let me share in your passion. But let it be a secret between you and me. Let the world see a normal man, while I burn with your love on the inside." And the most amazing part of this story is that God answered him. The red spots faded. The skin on his hands and feet returned to its normal appearance. To his mother, to the local doctor, to the villagers of Pietrelcina, Fra Pio looked like any other sickly young priest. But the pain did not leave. In fact, the pain intensified. From 1911 until 1918, 7 long years, Padre Pio lived with the invisible stigmata. He became a living paradox. He would shake hands with people, and they would feel a warm, dry palm, never knowing that the man smiling at them was experiencing the sensation of a nail being driven through his flesh. He would walk through the town, and no one knew that every step was a participation in the way of the cross. Why would God allow this? Why grant the wounds but hide them? We must understand that this period was a time of purification. God was tempering Pio's soul like steel in a furnace. If the visible wounds had appeared immediately and permanently in 1911, perhaps the young friar would have been crushed by the weight of the attention. Perhaps the church was not yet ready. Or perhaps, and this is the most beautiful possibility, God wanted to teach us that the most profound sacrifices are the ones nobody sees. During these years, the pain was not constant in its intensity. It had a rhythm. Pio noted that the agony would sharpen particularly on certain days, Thursdays and Fridays. The days commemorating the passion and death of Jesus were the hardest. On these days, the invisible wounds would burn with a ferocity that often left him bedridden. He would tell his family he was just feeling ill or suffering from his usual fevers, hiding the supernatural reality behind the guise of natural sickness. But the hands and feet were only the beginning. In his correspondence, specifically a letter from 1915, Padre Pio reveals an even deeper, more harrowing secret. He confides in Father Agostino, another of his spiritual guides, about a pain that he had suffered almost once a week for years. He writes about the crowning of thorns. We look at the statues of Padre Pio, and we see the gloved hands. We rarely think of his head, but he admitted that he experienced the distinct physical sensation of sharp thorns being pressed into his skull. He described it as a wreath of fire tightening around his head. Imagine suffering a migraine that is not a migraine, a pain that is physical but has a spiritual origin. He bore the headache of Christ. And he did this while studying, while writing letters, while praying with his family. He reveals that this, too, was a secret he kept from almost everyone. He bore the flagellation, the sensation of being scourged, often on those same holy days. His back would burn as if struck by whips, yet the skin remained unbroken. The psychological weight of this invisible martyrdom is hard for us to comprehend. To suffer is hard. To suffer alone is harder, but to suffer in a way that is physically impossible, yet undeniably real, requires a trust in God that is absolute. He had to trust that he wasn't going mad. He had to trust that this pain had a purpose. He often expressed to his directors that he felt like a boat lost in a stormy sea, unsure if he was navigating toward God or being deceived by the enemy. The devil, famously, would attack him during these years, trying to convince him that the pains were delusions or punishments, or that God had abandoned him. The invisibility of the wounds made these attacks even more potent. If this is from God, the enemy would whisper, why does he hide it? Why does he hurt you in the dark? But Padre Pio held fast to obedience. He wrote everything to his directors. He submitted his experiences to the authority of the Church, even when he didn't understand them himself. This obedience was the anchor that kept him safe. The invisible stigmata teaches us something profound about the nature of love. True love does not seek an audience. True love is willing to suffer for the beloved, even if no one ever claps, even if no one ever writes a book about it. Padre Pio was saving souls in 1912, 1913, 1914, not by preaching to thousands, but by offering up the secret fire in his hands and the secret thorns in his head. There is a moment in the letters where we see the intimacy of this exchange. He speaks of Jesus not as a distant figure, but as a present companion who is both the cause of the pain and the comforter of it. He writes that Jesus would sometimes make him feel the weight of the cross on his shoulder, another invisible wound. The shoulder wound, which tradition says was the most painful for Christ, was a burden Pio carried in silence. It changed the way he walked. A slight stoop that people attributed to weakness, but which was actually the weight of the world's sins. We must also consider the physical toll. During this period, Padre Pio was drafted into the Italian army during World War I. Can you imagine? A mystic, carrying the invisible wounds of Christ, forced to wear a uniform, carry a rifle, and live in the barracks? The pain in his feet must have been excruciating during drills. The coarse fabric of the uniform against a back that felt scourged must have been agony. Yet, his military records simply show a soldier who was frequently discharged for unexplained fevers and bronchitis. The doctors could find the fever, sometimes so high it broke their thermometers. But they couldn't find the source. They were looking for a virus, but the source was the fire of divine love. This period of invisibility lasted until 1918. We know what happened then. On September 20th, 1918, the prayer was reversed in a sense. The Lord decided that the time for secrecy was over. The wounds broke open, visible and bleeding, and they would not close again for 50 years. But why the change? Why did God lift the veil? Perhaps because the vessel was finally ready. After 7 years of hidden tempering, Padre Pio had proven his faithfulness. He had proven that he loved the cross for the sake of the cross, not for the glory it might bring. He had carried the weight in the dark, so he was now strong enough to carry it in the light. When we look at the life of Padre Pio, we often covet the miracles. We want the ability to read souls, to bilocate, to heal. But the invisible Stigmata asks us a difficult question. Would we want the wounds if no one could see them? Would we be willing to carry the pain of the gospel if it brought us no recognition, only private suffering? For many of you listening, this story is a mirror. You may not have the Stigmata, but you have invisible wounds. You have chronic pain that doctors can't diagnose or fix. You have the heartache of a family situation that you can't tell anyone about. You have the grief of a loss that the world thinks you should have gotten over by now. You are carrying a cross that is invisible to your neighbors, your co-workers, perhaps even your spouse. Padre Pio's life from 1911 to 1918 tells you this. Your invisible pain is not wasted. It is not meaningless. In the eyes of God, the suffering you bear in silence is just as powerful, just as redemptive, and just as holy as the suffering of a martyr in the public square. When you offer that hidden headache, that secret anxiety, that physical ache to God, you are joining the invisible Stigmata of the Church. You are standing under the elm tree with the young Fra Pio. You are saying, Lord, I don't need the world to know. I just need you to use this. Padre Pio once said, the life of a Christian is nothing but a perpetual struggle against self. There is no flowering of the soul to the beauty of its perfection, except at the price of pain. He learned this truth not in the pulpit, but in the quiet years when his hands burned with a fire that only God could see. Let us take courage from his silence. Let us realize that God is often closest to us, not when we are shouting from the mountaintops, but when we are whispering our yes in the valleys of shadow. As we conclude this reflection, I want you to look at your hands. They may not have red marks, they may not bleed, but they are made for holy work, and sometimes the holiest work is simply holding on to your faith when it hurts. Thank you for spending this time in the company of Padre Pio. If this story touched your heart, If it gave meaning to your own hidden struggles, please share this message with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, you are never truly alone in your suffering. We are walking this road together, guided by the saints who have gone before us. May the peace of Christ, which surpasses all understanding, guard your hearts and your minds. Until we meet again, keep the faith and keep walking. God bless you.